It was the cheapest listing on the rental site, and honestly, I needed something fast. After my last job fell through, and my roommate ditched town with my half of the deposit, I couldn't afford to be picky. The house was old, no doubt, and tucked away in a quiet neighborhood just outside Cincinnati. The landlord seemed in a hurry to rent it out, barely asked me anything, and handed over the keys like he couldn't wait to get rid of them. The place looked fine enough at first glance. One story with a slanted roof, white paint peeling at the corners, and a wide living room that smelled faintly of dust and wood polish. Nothing fancy but livable. The first night passed without anything unusual. I was too tired from the move to care about anything besides the mattress on the floor. I didn't even set up the rest of my furniture, just crashed. The morning after, I went to unpack and immediately noticed something strange. The hallway leading to the bathroom seemed narrower, like it had shifted somehow. I brushed it off. Old house, weird angles, no big deal. But then I noticed the bookshelf. I hadn't touched it yet, but now it was standing on the opposite side of the room and the living room window was gone. I literally stood there staring at the blank wall, trying to convince myself I was misremembering. Maybe I was just exhausted. Maybe stress was playing tricks. I went about my day ignoring the weirdness and told myself I'd fix the layout later. But each night, I'd fall asleep in one version of the house and wake up in another. The second night, the kitchen island disappeared. Gone. Like it had never been built. But instead, there was now a small, narrow pantry I hadn't seen before. My boxes were untouched, but the layout kept shifting as if the house was being edited silently while I slept. I started taking photos. At first, to prove to myself I wasn't losing it, I lined up shots of the living room before bed and checked them in the morning. Every single one showed a different arrangement. The couch would rotate, or the walls would extend outward slightly, or door frames would become windows. Nothing dramatic, but enough to be undeniable. When I told my friend Sam, he laughed and said, I probably had a leaky roof and a leaky brain to go with it. I stopped trying to explain. But then on the fourth night, I found something new. A staircase. It hadn't been there before. A narrow wooden staircase leading upward from a hallway that had previously ended at a blank wall. I hadn't heard construction. No dust. No tools. Just a staircase that appeared as if it had always been part of the house. I climbed halfway up and saw that it led to a small wooden door. No knob, just a keyhole. I didn't have a key for it, and when I pressed my ear against it, I could swear I heard breathing on the other side. I spent the entire fifth day trying to figure out how the staircase could have appeared. I measured the outside of the house and compared it to the rooms inside. The dimensions didn't add up. It was like the house had more space on the inside than physically possible. That door at the top of the stairs stayed locked, no matter how hard I pushed or knocked. That night, I moved my mattress into the hallway so I could watch the staircase while I slept. I wanted to see if it disappeared again, or if something came through it. I barely slept. Around 3 a.m., I heard a soft creaking above. I opened my eyes, and the staircase was darker than the rest of the hallway, like the shadows were thicker there. I got up and climbed halfway again. This time the air felt different, heavier, like the second floor had its own atmosphere. I whispered hello just to hear my own voice, but the silence that followed felt too still. Not empty, just quiet in a way that felt watched. I went back down. The staircase stayed, the door stayed, but every day after that, the rest of the house began to change faster. Entire rooms shifted. Walls that used to be solid now had doorways. The kitchen window disappeared completely. On the seventh night, I woke up and the living room had been replaced by a narrow hallway of mirrors. Dozens of mirrors lining both sides. Some were dusty, some were shattered, but each one reflected a slightly different version of me, some with different clothes. One version looked directly at me, even though I hadn't moved. It blinked when I didn't. I ran. I slammed the bedroom door shut and didn't sleep. The next morning, all the mirrors were gone, but now the bedroom had no door. Just an opening. I noticed a change in the ceiling paint symbols drawn in chalk above the bed like old runes or ritual signs. I didn't draw them. I had no idea where they came from. I finally called the landlord, but the number was disconnected. I drove to the address listed on the lease. It was an empty lot. No office, no trace. It was like the rental had never been listed. My payment app showed no record of the deposit. I started digging through the basement after that. I hadn't explored it before. It was colder than the rest of the house and damp. Boxes were stacked neatly in the corner, all labeled with names I didn't recognize. Inside one, I found a journal. Old leather-bound, filled with shaky handwriting. The last entry read, "The house remembers. The house rearranges to fit you, and when you fit just right, it lets you upstairs." I felt sick reading it, like something in me already knew it was true. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the hallway staring at the staircase. The door at the top was open. The door at the top of the stairs stood open like a mouth waiting to speak. I don't remember walking toward it. One moment I was in the hallway, and the next I was standing inside the room. It wasn't big, just 4 walls, no windows, no lights, yet I could see everything clearly. The floor was made of old wood, but there were no dust marks, no signs anyone had ever stood there before. But the room didn't feel empty. It felt full of something. Memory, energy, presence. At the center was a chair. On the chair was a box. A plain wooden box, almost like a jewelry case. I opened it slowly, and inside was a small reel of film. Taped to it was a note that read, "You fit." That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Not walking up the stairs, just suddenly there, like they'd always been in the room. I spun around, and there was no one. But the door was now closed. I tried it. Locked. Not budging. Suddenly, the walls of the room began to shift, not move like doors or panels, but ripple, like the whole space was breathing. I backed into a corner and watched in horror as each wall transformed into a screen, and then they turned on, each one showing a different version of me. In some, I was older. In some, I looked terrified. In one, I was trying to claw my way out of the room. The footage wasn't acting, it was me, trapped in this same room, over and over. Different clothes, different years, same expression, confusion, then panic, then realization. I began screaming, punching the walls. No sound came out, like the room had silenced my voice. One of the screens showed me standing in a different house entirely, one I'd never been to. Another showed me at a funeral, my own. I recognized people I hadn't seen in years, crying over a closed casket. Then it all faded to black. All 4 screens off. The room quiet again. A new sound emerged, a quiet knocking, coming from under the floorboards. I got on my knees and pressed my ear to the wood. The knocking continued, rhythmic, deliberate. I pulled up a floorboard, just one. Underneath was pitch black, like a void, but something was moving down there. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. Breathing, waiting. I stood up and backed away, heart pounding. The room didn't want me dead. It wanted me remembered. It wanted me to watch myself break. And then, just like that, the door creaked open. I ran down the stairs. The house was completely different now. Not shifting anymore. Not glitching. It was finished. Every wall solid. Every room still. The mirrors were gone. The stairs were gone. There was no evidence of change, except for the box in my hand. I left the house that night. Never went back. I told people it had been a bad rental. Just one of those things. But sometimes, when I pass by a mirror, or wake up in a room that feels off, I wonder if I ever really left. If maybe that version of me is still in the room, watching. Or worse, still fitting.